So many women have learned how to function, how to give, how to hold it all together. But somehow we have truly forgotten what it's like to feel at home, really at home in our bodies.
And that's why we created Rooted in Desire, a 2-day tantric immersion just for women so that you can slow down and you can start to listen to your body so that you can release what no longer serves you and reconnect with your sensuality as something deeply intelligent and highly sacred.
This is really more than a weekend. It's a reclamation for your confidence, for your sensuality, for your sovereignty. You, my friend, my sister, are meant to feel turned on and totally alive in your body. You're meant to trust yourself and you're also meant to trust others. How do we cross that hurdle?
Well, we're going to do it through tantric practices, through qigong, and through jade egg practices, not to mention sacred ritual. We're going to explore feminine power as something lived, not just
Mhm.
performed. It's not about pushing boundaries. It's about safety, presence, and truth.
You'll be held in a circle of women who are walking the same path. We're curious, we're open hearted, we are ready to meet and encounter ourselves more fully. And there is something so profoundly healing about being seen and witnessed and not needing to explain or perform.
So, this is really your invitation to step into sensuality and self trust, not someday, but right now.
For more information, including the cities and the dates that you can register for Rooted in Desire, go to sexreimagine.com/rooted in desire.
What if menopause was something that we could go through with grace and with ease? Today, we've got Dr. Cari, not only just a phenomenal source of wisdom on the topic, but also a dear friend of mine. So I'm very excited to riff with her today because we have very similar backgrounds, Chinese medicine and functional medicine. And I'm just can't wait for this interview.
So, you guys tune in, turn on, and fall in love with the beautiful, the wise, the brilliant Dr. Cari.
Welcome to the Sex Reimagined podcast, where sex is shame-free and pleasure-forward. Let's get into the show.
Welcome to the show.
Oh, so happy to be here, ladies. Yeah, so great.
So, Cari, you've been in this field for a long time and you've focused in on women's health and also men's hormonal health as well. So, we'll talk a little bit about both. And you recently wrote a book, which
Did.
I want us to talk about that too, because I love the title of it, the Menopause Midwife. Is that the
Yes.
title? Yeah.
Oh, that's
Your
a great
menopause
title.
midwife, yeah,
Right.
right. For so long, menopause was ignored. It was a bad word. We didn't talk about it. Women didn't talk about it. You didn't mention it. And there was just not a lot of support. And actually what's going on right now in the field is this taboo of hormone replacement has been removed from standard medical care. And now every doctor you talk to is throwing hormones at women. But it's still missing a big part of it. And so I'm really passionate about women being supported through this process, understanding what's going on in their body through this process so that it doesn't have to be bumpy. We've got this whole illusion that symptoms equal menopause, and nothing could be further from the truth, right? Nothing could be further from the truth. So
Tell us more about that. Speak a little bit more to that.
So our bodies are divinely designed to go through menopause. There are 4 species of mammals that go through menopause. It's not an accident. It's not like, oops, oh, sorry. I literally got into this field of talking about it because I was at a hormone seminar with this doctor who was supposed to be the doctor on this subject. And she stood around the room and started the talk with, from a biological and anthropological perspective, women are done post-menopause. And I was like, what? And then it got worse. Then she went on to say that we should keep women bleeding until they're in their 90s. But then it got worse in that I was talking with a man who put this seminar on, and he equated women being that many species die after giving birth. And so we're sort of lucky that we're still around. I'm like, are you kidding me? I looked at him and I was like, and Black widows eat their mates post-coitus. So are you saying that we should start imitating them too? Like what? What are we doing?
That's great.
And then I literally just recently, so that was some years ago, recently another doctor said, well, we women didn't used to live very long. And so this whole thing, and I'm like, no, we go through menopause because we're a species that lives longer. And because of that, the mature woman serves a biological purpose that the hormones of the fertility years don't serve. We don't need to be producing those high level of hormones anymore. We don't need to be dumping out, losing our blood every month anymore. We don't need to be doing that. We need to be doing something else to act in this new role. And that new role is the wisdom keeper. Our job is literally to inform our tribe how to continue thriving and surviving, right? And that's why I love what you guys do, because I know you do it for all different ages, but you talk about that aspect of thriving in life, keeping that our vitality, our creativity, our creative centers alive. And so much of the conversation is like, oh, menopause, hot flashes, wrinkle, getting ignored, that whole story. And I'm like, no, that's an imbalance during menopause. That's called menopausal syndrome. And if you'll bear with me for 1 second, because this is a point that I just think when I saw it, it was like one of those big ahas. Our hormones, I wasn't taught in school, Will, I don't know if you were, where our hormones get produced post-menopause. So I didn't know that. I wasn't taught that in school.
Though I do want to say there are people who refute that it's not that the adrenals don't do that much production. That does a little bit, but not a ton.
But post-menopause, what happens though is the adrenals don't produce hormones; they produce the precursor to your hormones.
Right.
And they're always doing that for progesterone. They're always making the precursor for progesterone throughout. And that's where stress can really play a role in perimenopause and in earlier days around our hormone cycle. But now we're in menopause and our adrenals are producing they are the only producer of the precursor to estrogen. And so if they're stressed out, they're dealing with the survival things, the things that are like, oh my gosh, this is an emergency. I'm going to die if this doesn't get handled. That's what your adrenals prioritize. Body's always prioritizing towards survival. Hormone production, immune function, all of that comes kind of
secondary. Yeah.
Right.
It's secondary. And so that production, the resources go towards those things needed for survival. So if we're stressed out, we're not going to be making those precursors in a robust amount. And that conversion to estrogen is not going to happen to its full potential for this phase of life, which is, a lot less estrogen. But we're supposed to have less estrogen.
Right.
Okay, so let me recap. Do you mind real quick, Will?
Yeah.
So, all right, what I hear you saying is that there's a big gap. There's a gap between what we are doing right now in modern times around perimenopause and menopause. There was years and decades and generations where it was ignored and women suffered in silence. Now we're starting to take a look at, the big buzz is hormone replacement therapy. And we're taking a look at symptoms. And when we're asking the questions, when exactly am I supposed to get support? Is it when I have symptoms? A lot of doctors say we don't do anything until you get symptoms. And there's a whole school of thought that said you need to take care of your bones, your tissues, your muscles, and all your brain fog and all these things that are coming your way sooner before you start having symptoms of it. But what I hear you saying is that there's a gap, and that gap has to do with the sacred, spiritual wisdom significance that comes with us getting older and tapping into the initiation of womanhood, where there's a conversation that needs to be had that is way deeper, way more significant, that allows us, I love that the word menopause has the word pause in it, because I think there's this moment where this is a gift. We get to take a pause. Reflect on our life's journey. Reflect on everything that we've gathered, from the blessings to overcoming obstacles. Allow that to fully maturate and to collect the wisdom and the insight and the years of experience that we've cultivated, and sit with that for a moment. Have some appreciation. Be in sacred circles where we get to talk about what that means to us, and then step into a new role for maybe a younger generation. Or maybe the generation that we're interacting with who may be older than us, who may be the same age, going through the same things. And like, how can we have a different community around these wisdom years that we get to initiate into? I mean, this is my spin on it because I actually feel like there's a big gap there, right?
I do, and I love it, Leah, but I'll say this. I was having a conversation with this woman. She's actually a sadhu, wears the red robe. She's second in charge of an ashram in India. And I was having a conversation with her around it, and my husband chimed in and goes, "Oh, tell her, your take on this." And at the time I was calling it Wise Woman Emerging. And she looked at me and she said, Cari, when I was hot flashing like crazy, I could care less about my wise woman. And here's a woman who that's what she is. She's a wise woman. Like that's her role. And so I agree with that. Conversation has to come. But when a woman is suffering, which happens in 70 to 75% of the women in our culture, they go through symptoms. It's rare that women don't. We got to get them comfortable first. And so before we have this other conversation, which I'm jamming on, I love and I want to have, I just want to make one lead for women. And which is that if your body is under stress, it's prioritizing taking care of that instead of producing the hormones. So your hormone levels drop low for this phase of life. That's not menopause, that's menopausal syndrome. That's an imbalanced state. And where we get into the wisdom of this that I love is that the body is so wide that we cannot do well at our role as a wise woman if we're running around like chickens with their head cut off in a chronic stress state. Our body's like, don't have access. You can't you will not access your wisdom. So it's literally like the universe and the creator created us in a way that says, you're going to step into this role. You have to embody it to step into it.
Okay. So another distinction question, and then I'll hand it over to Willow. Willow, thanks for being so patient. Is when you say menopausal syndrome and menopause, what's the difference between the two?
So menopause is we go through this natural transition. Our ovaries stop producing hormones. Our adrenals take over this bigger role. Our estrogen starts getting made in our fat. Our menses stops. That's menopause. Normal body knows how to do it. The amount of hormones we have goes down because we don't need all those hormones to make ourselves bleed every month to prepare for a baby. We don't need it anymore. Totally normal. There are many women that go through this transition completely symptom-free. When the body is under stress, when it's having trouble producing enough hormones through this new hormonal production system, we get symptoms. That's menopausal syndrome. So now we have this combination of stress on the body plus low hormones, which makes our symptoms so much more intense. And so the hormone piece gets all the attention because sure, you take hormones, you feel a little better, but it does not address the stress on the system. And if that stays, we stay in a degenerative, a premature aging breakdown process, right? And we don't even utilize our hormones well because our body's too stressed out to break them down properly and utilize them well. So it leaves us in a stress state. So I'm always like, hormone replacement, maybe. But we got to back up. We got to look at how your adrenals are doing, and we got to back up even further and look at what's stressing your system out in the first place. When we do that, the other two are gravy. But if we don't do that, the other two are kind of like a little bit of icing on top that might help a little, but they don't get to the root of it, right? And when we get to the root of it, now we can have the conversation you're talking about having.
So great.
Yeah. And I think, a lot of the stressors that we don't think of as stressors that we do have control over. Like, of course, like if a family member dies, that's stressful. If you have to move, that's stressful. Getting divorced, that's stressful. Like these things happen in life. And yes, they tax your adrenals and your hormones don't work as well. But, diet. If we look at diet, number one stressor. If we look at exogenous hormones coming from soaps, detergents, liquids, all we have to do is look around our house and we can clean up a pretty significant and easy to clean up layer of stress that our body is taking in consistently.
Or that chronic digestive thing that makes you eat only these certain foods or eat less food because otherwise you get bloated, blah, blah, blah. That's a stressor, ladies, and that's going to, be taxing the adrenal system. So yes, absolutely. I will tell you, with hot flashes, the majority of women that I work with who have hot flashes, it's an hidden immune challenge. The majority of the time, often in the urinary system from years of having bladder infections or whatever, and it's been lingering. Or maybe it's a digestive, like a parasite. I had one woman come in and she wicked night sweats and couldn't sleep. It was a parasite. I had a woman who didn't sleep for a year because she had such horrible night sweats. Within 4 days of starting some stuff to clean up her urinary system, her night sweats were gone. So it's that compounding stressor that is driving that imbalance that's heating us up and making those symptoms worse. And again, if we just take the hormones, then we also have to take a lot more hormones to try to balance out the system. And that it has its own factors, that can be tricky on the body. So yes, I love that you brought that in. So important.
Yeah. I mean, healing your adrenals is, in my mind and in my world, it's kind of like something you always keep your finger on the pulse of. I'm always monitoring, like, how early do I want to go to bed? How early do I want to get up? Do I want to take these supplements today? Do I want to eat that food today? I mean, because I have the knowledge of all of that. But I think, even doing meditation, breath work, yoga, walking slowly, walking in the park. I mean, a lot of people, I don't know if most is the right word, but many people are running at a parasympathetic dominant state, which means you're always on fight or flight. Like even when there's nothing going on, you're kind of breathing shallow and doing this. And those practices, to deepen your breath, to slow down your mind, to get out of the idea that you have any fucking control. A lot of it is just perspective shift. And, Dr. Cari is also recently certified in Joe Dispenza work, which, for those of you who are familiar with that work, is largely about like getting out of our persona and getting into the spaciousness of the all, like, which just basically means, letting go of control, letting go of your identity, your ego, because all of these things, if you think about them, they create, if you not just think about them, but feel into them, they create this contraction inside of you, right? It's like, okay, I'm Dr. Willow. I have to produce a podcast. I have to get all these things done for the next summit. I have to, I have to. And my nervous system goes constriction, stress.
And wind up.
Wind up. But if I remove all of that and change the perspective and I'm like, okay, I'm just floating through time and space as a being, and I get to offer these things. I get to do these things. I'm so lucky that I get to, produce and create in this world. That's my nervous system expands and opens.
Yes.
So Leah and I do talk about that a lot on our podcast, to like what opens you and what closes you. And I think just that simple thing is gonna start to change your adrenal picture.
100%. I have to say, in my years, I was on a long health journey, and my years of microman. I'm not saying that diet is important. I wrote a book on diet, right? It's an important foundation. You have to be getting nutrient-dense food in. But I micromanaged my diet for years in hopes that that was going to fix things. And then there's the supplements. And look at supplements. What I tell people is like, supplements are really great while we're figuring it out. They're really great at supporting these bodies, right? Because otherwise the body just gets beat up by whatever imbalance we're in. But then what's behind what dictates the food choices we make, or what time we go to bed, or that is those internal programs, those internal subconscious thought processes that we go through every day. And starting to become aware of what's our drivers, right? I'm not enough, so I have to go. I have to prove myself. I'm not this. There's something wrong with me, so I have to fix myself. And so, yeah, you can do all of that. But if you don't get to the drivers, then you're in a vicious loop. So I love that you brought that in.
Let's take a quick break.
Hey guys, what would it be like if you could last 10 times longer when you're having sex?
We are going to teach you how to gain massive confidence as a lover, all without performance anxiety, gimmicks, or prescription.
This course is perfect for you if you've ever been mortified by a sexual encounter that ended way too early.
Or if you've ever avoided intimacy out of fear that you won't last as long as your lover desires. Or maybe you long to give your partner multiple orgasms but can't last long enough to make that a reality.
Well, good news, we've got your back, and it's in our course, Last 10 Times Longer. Go to sexreimagine.com/last dash the number 10 X dash longer.
And for all of our favorite listeners out there, we are giving you a discount, 20% off, y'all. Just put in podcast 20, all caps, podcast 20 to get your 20% off of this phenomenal course that you're going to want to review more than once.
The link is in the show notes. We cannot wait to see you inside this course. Plus, don't forget, we always got tons of bonuses. See you there. I mean, it's interesting as I'm listening to you speak, and I'm like, oh, fuck, now I'm stressed out. I got to deal with plastics, and I got to change my detergent, and I got to clean my fucking diet. You know, sometimes I just need to have something sweet and salty and fried. There's this total reaction of like, oh my God, that is so fucking overwhelming. Talk about a cortisol dump. I'm feeling it right now. So what is something simple that isn't super time consuming when you've got women who are maybe at the peak of their career and they're worried about money because they've got 3 kids they got to put through college? I mean, we're talking about a very interesting age where we're not quite at retirement, where we get to start dipping into our savings. And now retirement years are even in the 70s. They're no longer just 64 and 65. So yes, perspective shift is everything. So as I was listening, I was like feeling the sense of like, oh, this is like an uphill battle. I'm not going to win. Then I was like, oh, well, okay, here's a moment to change perspective. You don't have to do it all at once. It's a journey. What if it were actually an adventure? What if it was something that was like connected to something a lot more deeper inside of you that was inspiring and not necessarily taxing, and you didn't have to do it all at once? You could make it small little changes.
Better if you don't. Yeah.
Yeah, right. It's about decreasing stress. So if you're doing it from a perspective of stress, that's not actually helpful. How you eat those French fries matters a lot. You eating those French fries feeling guilty about it, it's actually creating more constriction in your liver and your gallbladder, which have to deal with the fried oils, which, they're not great for us. But once in a while, if we have some French fries,
if
and
you're eating those French fries
with
bliss, are the most amazing thing on the planet that you are doing just fine. It every day.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So you bless those French fries. You give thanks for the potatoes. All of that's going to go a long way. If you're eating with shame and guilt, the shame and guilt is way worse for us than the French fry would ever be. Right?
Yeah.
And so if you're eating the French fry because you're having a bad day and you're not feeling good, and that actually isn't good. But if you're in a place of joy and you're feeling good and you're having a celebration of food, go, and life should be luscious.
Yeah.
It's not about life being restrictive. It's about
and it should be
being
balanced.
Luscious.
Yeah, it doesn't mean restriction, I think, is a very dangerous road to take.
It's stressful on the body too, So you asked what are some simple things that people can do. One very simple thing that you can do is before you do start eating, take 3 deep breaths. Very simple. Another very simple thing that people can start doing is drinking more water. Nobody drinks enough water throughout the day. So that very simple thing is going to support all your systems in your bodies, including your adrenals.
I do want to say, because I do meet a lot of women who actually overdrink, which depletes minerals. So we can overdo. We don't want to be doing a gallon plus water a day. I tell women, depending on your size and your weight, that 8 to 10 cups a day. Or if you're really petite, maybe 6 to 8, but much more than 10. Now we start to deplete minerals. So I am a little bit cautious about that. Well, I have seen some women who come in with their I drink this much water a day.
In Santa Barbara, California. I would say the majority of people in the United States are not drinking enough water.
That's true. And then the one thing that I really know makes a difference, this was part of my picture. So I had protracted adrenal exhaustion that I just couldn't fix. And it wasn't until I learned about the principles of blood sugar regulation and how taxing it is on the body when our blood sugar drops low, and how that puts us in a full-blown stress response. And I will tell you, the majority of anxiety cases that I see, it's actually a low blood sugar issue. Like they're going into anxiety because their body is thinking they're running into a crisis of blood sugar. And not all of them, but a large majority, it's playing a role. I have people do what's called a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor. And I had this one client who was experiencing anxiety perimenopausal, and she just didn't want to do it. She didn't. And then she finally did it. And she's on the call with me and she started to cry. And she said, "Thank you so much for having me do this, because I'm now understanding what my body is telling me, and it's been starving."
Wow.
Yeah. And it just like, the tears. So keeping it simple, just eating, small meals more often rather than one, the idea like, oh, I didn't eat all day so I can have this huge meal. Women often aren't educated about the fact that it's calories in a meal that are important, not calories in a day. So if you eat 1,000 calories at one meal, you're going to make fat. You're going to make fat. Your body's going to store the extra glucose as fat. And so here you starved yourself all day and you overeat in your body, and you gain more fat. And certainly not what many women are trying to do, right?
Cari,
You know, my
Oh, go ahead, Leah.
my husband is intermittent fasting right now, and he always loves it when we do things together. I'm like, I've done a little bit of it, but I get hangry,
Yeah,
like
no, it's
I get
really
a
not.
surge
Not
of
ideal for
discontent.
bodies.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you, what do you think about intermittent fasting for women, considering what you just shared around oftentimes we have one big meal and we're not really taking care of our blood sugar?
I think it's a nightmare for this, particularly this phase of life. And I've seen it. I've seen intermittent fasters, and I've done adrenal panels on there, and their adrenals are they're just exhausted because they're constantly trying, and they're doing it with not enough nutrition, right?
Right.
We eat to give our body the glucose it needs, unless you're in a ketogenic diet, a whole other subject, but the glucose it needs and the nutrients it needs to run itself. That's why we eat. We don't eat yes, it can be pleasurable, but we don't eat just because it has a function. And so if we're not eating in a way that supplies that function, we're putting the body in a stress state. And that chronic stress state taxes that system. And really
What are your thoughts on more carb heavy toward the end of the day? There is a popular book out. I forget the name of the author, but she's big in the menopause and adrenal functional medicine world. And it talks about, eating proteins and fats and, vegetables earlier on in the day. And then toward the end of the day, having, healthy carbs like brown rice or whatever, quinoa, something along those lines.
So I
help you sleep better.
I know for me, if I don't eat protein at night, I sleep better. And that's actually counter. Like even in the blood sugar regulation training I had, it was eat protein right before bed. And sometimes that I will have people do a little bit. But like sitting down to a big, heavy protein meal, I find for me, I wake up in the middle of the night.
Too much to digest.
Too much for my liver to deal with. So if I'm doing it, more of a vegetarian-based protein idea, a legume and a grain, that kind of thing at night, and just making my lunch my big meal and my dinner a lighter meal, I actually find that I do better. Now, if we're going through adrenal repair, sometimes I will give people protein right before bed. You wake in the middle of the night, do a little carb and protein. I will sometimes for repair purposes do that. But as a general rule, I find I sleep better without the heavy protein meal at night.
Interesting. Yeah.
I had adrenal fatigue about 12 years ago. And the prescription that I got was basically like protein every 2 hours.
Yeah.
And then a ton of supplements. The supplements really didn't help me. And I actually went into some negative food relationship stuff trying to get that protein because I was so stressed and exhausted. I was going towards comfort food. So I was eating like a cheeseburger 2 hours, like really just no bun, but a cheeseburger. At some point, the wisest thing to do, but I'm a comfort eater, so like if you want to change, the quickest way to change my state when I'm stressed and overwhelmed is to put something in my mouth because the chemical reaction is so fast. And so that was always my go-to. Anyways, the thing that helped the most during my adrenal fatigue was going to an acupuncture clinic, and they would let me, they'd put the needles in, I put an eye mask on, and they would let me just sleep there for hours with the needles in.
Oh,
And I
nice.
went like every single day for like 3 months. And
That's amazing.
it changed my life. And it was one of those community clinics. So, they were giving acupuncture to people all in one room. The lights were dim and they'd gong music playing. And it wasn't like I was taking up a treatment room, but it was amazing. The best thing I could have done for my adrenals was acupuncture. And you're both acupuncturists, yes?
We are. Yeah, I go to and I'm curious about you, Will. I go needles in too long can be a little draining.
Right.
Want me to do that?
Right.
But I mean, it worked
wondered.
for you, which is great. But I that's one thing. Like for me, when my adrenals were weak, I would be on the table and I would start pulling my needles. 'Cause I was like, I'm done. They're off in the other room, whatever. And they'd walk in, all the needles would be out there like, what? And I was like, I was done. My body was like, done.
That's funny. Yeah, I mean, I think every body is different. That's part of the beauty of how Chinese medicine looks at every body. We're really looking at the foundation. We're tuning into the nervous system. We're taking the pulse. We're checking the tongue. What's going on in the gut? We can see that on the tongue. We can see what's happening inside the body through these subtle things that we open our senses to. So we have to become more attuned. We have to become more sensitive as Chinese medicine doctors. One of the things that I wish I could just do this for everyone on the planet is moxa their kidneys, moxa their adrenal glands, because I've used moxa to restore.
What's moxa?
Moxa is Chinese mugwort. So it comes in like a long tube and like a big cigar, looks like a big cigar, and you light the end. And so it's got a little cherry on the end, and you just hold that warm cherry of heat right next to the points of the kidneys and the adrenals on the lower back, and also some points along the legs to restore just chi and vitality. And I mean, time and time again, I feel like, people come in like a withered plant that hasn't been tended to in about 3 weeks, and like it's just a thirsty plant, and they leave and they're just like, wow, I got watered, and they just have so much more energy coming through their eyes. I really got the magnitude of how powerful moxa is as a healing modality when I was working with Raven Lang, who was in Santa Cruz. I apprenticed with her for about a year, and she was a midwife. Speaking of midwifing your own body. And so she was a midwife for a long time, and she also trained and studied with Miriam Lee, who was the original Chinese medicine doctor who got acupuncture as a licensed thing in California.
Wow.
And Miriam was she was a midwife in China. So, but she couldn't practice midwifery in the States, but Raven could. So Raven was working with Miriam, and she would always have Raven Miriam Lee worked in San Francisco. She would have people lined up around the corner to come into her office to see her. People who were dying of AIDS, cancer, severe depletion and deficiency. And she would have Raven put these pots of moxa, burning the smoke under, loose moxa, burning underneath a chair. And she would put the patient on the chair with holes in the chair, and then put a blanket around them. So they just got basically bathed in moxa. And it would heal, those
moxa sauna.
Yeah, moxa sauna. Those the AIDS patients would get the sarcoma, those would disappear. They would just radically go away. So when I apprenticed with Raven for a year, I mean, she was just so big on moxa. Plus, she was doing a lot of postpartum care. So talk about adrenal, shrinking.
Yeah.
And we would always bathe the adrenals in moxa. We called it mother roasting. It's like a tradition actually that goes into all these different all these different tribal traditions. So yeah, but if you have an acupuncturist out there, make sure they're moxing your adrenals if you know that that's part of the hormonal imbalance. Yeah.
Yeah, and Moxa burns at a very specific temperature that you can't just burn anything. It burns at a very specific temperature that puts heat in at a level that doesn't dry out the tissue. So it's very specific in its function.
Nuanced. One of the big things I'm concerned about as I'm going through perimenopause is my bone health. I've got a small case of osteopenia in my spine and in my hips, and I want to reverse that. Also, brain fog has been probably the predominant struggle that I'm experiencing, and keeping my muscles. And so, I mean, there's going to the gym. I know that's the biggest intervention I can do for my bones and my muscles, at least that I'm aware of. So how does this all relate to some of the symptoms I'm experiencing? Because I do feel the need to take a look at hormone replacement therapy. I also want to stay young. I want my vagina to be strong and healthy and lifted and plump. I don't want to go through tearing. I don't want to go through dryness. That would be my preference. So sometimes I'm like, this all natural thing, yeah,
Well, I'm
maybe.
on hormone replacement, and
Okay.
and I, what
Yeah,
what
she's
what I
not
say.
saying don't do it.
I'm not saying don't do it.
Not-
I'm
not-
saying don't stop there because
Okay.
it's
Dig deeper.
what's getting in the way of your body. Now it may have been a long-term health. That's why I needed it. A long-term health thing that my adrenals are just they're just not as robust as they could be even still because of I had a chronic Lyme's blah 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 for undiagnosed. But when we look at bone health, yes, there's a hormonal piece, but you also your calcium in your bones is your storage depot, it's your savings account. That every time your body goes into a state of acidity in your blood is maintained at 7.2 pH. Really, 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 if you go off of that, you're really sick. And if you don't have from your diet, from your digestion, from your absorption, the nutrients the body needs to do that, it takes it from your bones. And so I call it living in the red. So whenever we're looking at osteopenia or osteoporosis, we're looking at a case of the body living in the red. And so we want to get out of our savings account, right?
Mhm.
And we want to get back into depositing back into the black. And so we look at deeper things like dietary choices, but then really important digestive choices. How is our digestion? How are we breaking it down and absorbing it?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Now, what about men in this conversation? Where do we start talking about, because it's always so focused, women in menopause, but the conversation doesn't go very far when it talks about men and their cycles. Most people don't know the word andropause. In fact, I never even heard of the word andropause until about 2 years ago. So how do they filter into this conversation?
Well, men aren't changing like we're changing. We're changing the way we produce hormones. Men don't do that. They stay fertile for their whole life. Who was the actor recently that had a baby at like 80 years? Yeah. Anyway, I'm not saying it's ideal, but ostensibly, the sperm's probably not the most vital, but ostensibly they stay fertile. But what happens for men is their testosterone production could go down. But what I see even more than that is men will start to convert their testosterone into either estrogen or into dihydrotestosterone, DHT. DHT is like testosterone on steroids. It's like a supercharged form of testosterone, and it causes men to lose their hair. It causes them to develop hyperplasia in their prostate. There's health implications of having too much DHT in the system. And I look at it as like somebody who's like in such a push that they're having to, they're like pushing themselves into like go mode when their system, because their system actually needs to kind of slow down, they're going hyper. And the other thing that men do is they convert, when they're in a stress state, they convert their testosterone to estrogen. And when men's nipples start to protrude or they get little, we call them moobs, I see it in young men all the time. I'm like, oh my God, can I please just get my hands on this person? Because it will cause the erectile issues. The penis will shrink in size. if it happens enough, they'll get more feminine in their behavior. They literally did a study with young boys that were being exposed to, you had mentioned xenoestrogens, you didn't use that word, but chemicals that act like estrogens. Little boys that get exposed to normal amounts of plastics, because plastics carry, soft plastics have a chemical, like water bottles have a chemical on them called phthalates that are a xenoestrogen. In little boys, they're more effeminate and they have smaller penis sizes than their predecessors from years gone by. They literally did this study. So we're estrogenizing. Men are getting estrogenized, and when men have too much estrogen, they get fleshy. They work out. No matter how much they work out, they're just fleshy. They want to sit on the sofa and do this with the remote. They just lose their verve for life. And there's a couple of interesting things around this that I'll say, which is one is they did a study which showed that women who nag their men causes them to turn their testosterone into estrogen.
Wow.
No way. That's hilarious.
They literally took
men have
testosterone and then
tried.
had a woman in and then tested and it started converting. Isn't that interesting? So
interesting.
Yeah, and when men are they've also studied that when men are when they're working with something, if you sit them down and make them talk to you, it's actually the worst thing for them. That's when they start converting. They need to go do. They got to go do something.
So are you saying
move
For a bike
talk
ride.
on the walk?
Run.
Yes, exactly. Have the talk on a walk. It's not
Yeah.
that you can't talk or they don't. It's just that in the moment when they're in it, sitting
Or
down and
go
talk,
get that energy out and then come back and
that
talk.
can talk about it.
That's
Exactly.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. And so men go through this transition. And then what happens is they go to a doctor who looks at their testosterone, which looks low. And then they put them on testosterone replacement. And initially they feel great. And then they tank because now they're converting more testosterone into estrogen. And it's just a vicious cycle. And it's
really
huge.
Yeah, and that really points to what you were saying when we were talking about women is it's not just about, adding more something exogenous to the pool. I always use this analogy anytime I'm explaining things to people about, resetting their system. It's let's start with a liver cleanse. Because basically you have a big pool of dirty water and we don't want to just put more chemicals into that water. We need to clean the filter, right? So we need to do a liver cleanse. Your liver is your filter for all the blood in your body. And sometimes we need to do a couple of liver cleanses. I mean, one of the number one things you can do to keep your hormones balanced and regulated is a liver cleanse at least once a year and keep your blood sugar regulated. Those two things will make a huge difference. But yeah, that's fascinating that, just for men to go move I feel like I want to go move my body. I don't want to sit and have a conversation, about something heavy and ooh, close my nervous system down unless I've gone and moved some energy first.
Well, you've got that vitality.
Yeah, I've got that Rata thing going.
Well, when you think about how triggered we get in difficult conversations, we get tight, we get revved up, we get angry. Our ability to listen short circuits when our heart rate starts to go up because we're getting triggered. So it actually makes a lot of sense if you're going to have a difficult conversation to move your body while you're having it so that you can regulate the intensity that starts to rise when you hear something that's difficult to hear.
Yeah. And you don't and it contract around it and then it gets stuck in your body and your bowels. You're having trouble
I'm
pooping.
thinking
Look at
too,
your moods.
for men, there's probably this feeling of they're being reprimanded. They go back into their little boy, which is they didn't have
I'm
all
disappointed,
that
Mom.
testosterone when they
Yeah.
were the little boy,
Yeah.
So it's interesting that it converts into a more feminine hormone when they psychologically go back into that little boy.
Yeah, I
Mom
don't know if
told
it's a
me.
gender thing. I know when my husband wants to have a serious talk, I go into feeling reprimanded too.
You
I
do,
think
you
it can
little
go
girl.
in any
Yeah.
direction. Yeah. It's just
Yeah.
For time.
It's interesting. My husband and I talk about this a lot where the what's happening right now in the dynamic between men and women. And right now there's a lot of focus on the patriarchy, and what can happen often is that masculine is thrown into that pool, right? And what women, so we're in this conversation a lot, and what women can tend to do with their mate is they can not meaning to put them down or focus on what isn't working or what they want them to do. And what that does for a man is they literally, like you guys were talking about, they just deflate. And when they deflate, they start converting, and then they stop trying to please because it feels like they never can. It's like that basic nature. We're talking in heterosexual relationship, right?
Yeah.
But very often a man wants to please his mate. That's like what they want to do. They're actually biologically programmed to do that, to take care in that way. And then we come in with a lot of negative, and they check out. And then we're like, oh, well, they never do this or that, or we were literally just having this conversation.
Cycle, like it goes down and down that. I know your husband is amazing. Love your husband.
But just know on the libido subject, I did give you guys a link to a
it's your free gift.
It's a 15-minute audio where I talk about my take on libido. And then a little ebook with it for women. So we didn't get to have the conversation, so they can get that. And
Great.
You look at
and
it
how
from
can
there.
how can people find you? What's your website?
drcari4health.com.
Great. And so everyone, please buy your Menopause Midwife.
Well, it's not available yet. So what they can do is they can do one or two things if they wanted to. Does anything go out with this, with the information, or is it just the listening? Because
everything will be in the show notes.
Okay, in the show notes, if you can put in my phone number, the office phone number, they can just text the office and say, book. And then we'll put them on the list. And as the book gets closer and closer, it's with the publisher now, we'll send them out texts where they can, buy their copy or sign up for the pre-copy or whatever.
Okay, so they'll be the first to find out.
They'll be the first to find out, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Or if they want to, they can just go to my website, sign up for my newsletter and thing, and which I don't very often, people. And they'll get notices around the book coming out. So,
okay, so have no fear. Your inbox will not be flooded, but you will get the right news at the right time.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for this really balanced conversation. I think what you brought to the table is really helpful for us to continue, all this hot topic.
Yeah.
Menopause and perimenopause.
Thank you, ladies, for having me. It's so fun.
Thank you, Cari.
Yeah, I love seeing you. Anyway, till next time.
Ciao. Okay, friends, the show's not over. Up next is The Dish. Please stay tuned.
Now, our favorite part, the dish.
Well, you guys have really chosen, I think, a fascinating career. And one of the things that I admire a lot about you both is your capacity to take this ancient wisdom and really live it, to be able to take a look at your surroundings, take a look at what you choose to put in your body, how you manage to take time out to be in nature, to restore yourself, all of this fascinating, holistic inner workings of your lifestyle is so supported by what you do for a living. I just have a lot of admiration for it. There's a real rebellious part that I have a part that's very rebellious and doesn't like to be told what to do, and really resists sometimes doing things that are really good for me. And I'm starting to tackle that a little bit differently. Interestingly enough, during perimenopause, I'm trying to be more influenceable, and I've been reading this book, Atomic Habits, and it's really helping me take a look at stop being such a petulant teenager around some of this stuff. I've heard you talk about a goddamn liver cleanse how many umpteen times, and today was really the first time maybe it was the second or third time actually, if I'm being honest, where I'm I really got to do that. Where can I stop making it seem like it's so fucking difficult? It's not difficult.
Yeah.
Do it for your beautiful body. My God, do the things that are going to help you thrive. Why are you resisting it so hard? As if everyone's out there trying to be the boss of me. all fucked up. I feel like such a child, It's like, hey, let's mature this part a little bit.
Oh my God, that's great. Yeah, Atomic Habit book for that. That's
Yeah.
great. Yeah, I mean, it's a personal choice always, like what you choose to do each day and each moment of each day. So I think sometimes for me, I wish I didn't have all the knowledge and all the wisdom. It's like, can I just be like,
Just take a break from having
walk
to.
through life a little bit more, but it's just
Really?
never going to happen for me.
Yeah.
Because it can feel like a big responsibility, which is exactly what you're speaking to. It's like, God.
It doesn't seem fun. I think that's the other thing is like there's a mindset, I think, that needs to be retooled in my system where it's like it sounds like a drudgery. It doesn't sound like fun. It sounds hard. It sounds like it tastes disgusting. And, like it takes too much time. I'll be set up to fail. I won't be good at it. I don't want to do shit I'm not good at. So it's like there's that line where I think the mindset shift is like the most powerful thing we can first tackle when we want to tackle something that we feel challenged by or resistant with.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think when you start to just weave these little things into your day and into your lifestyle, it's not even a question of is it fun or not. Like what's fun is you feel better,
Right. Right.
What's fun is you have more energy, more vitality, you sleep better, you just have
you feel stronger and healthy.
Gone, like, you just can think better, you're more articulate, like it's just you feel like you're on top of your game and that's fun, that feels like. So for me it's like, I just wake up in the morning, I do my little bit of breath work. I just started doing a new thing, which is A Course in Miracles.
I love A Course in Miracles. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I have always wanted to get into A Course in Miracles, but it's just
powerful.
always been like it's to read it. It's
not an easy read.
Yeah, it's not an easy read. And then, I've never made it to you used to go to a class.
The classes, you can do them online now.
Never made it to that. There's one here in Santa Barbara. I don't know if I'll go to that, but just like doing the simple little morning practices through the workbook, literally it takes 3 to 5 minutes. It doesn't take that long. The other thing I'm trying to bring in is playing my handpan every morning, so it's like, okay. Yeah, it does feel like a discipline in the beginning, but if I play the handpan for 5 to 10 minutes every single morning before I go for my, dog walk, then pretty soon I'm going to be so much better at the handpan and it's going to be so much more fun to play.
Yeah.
So there's the discipline leads to more fun.
Yeah.
And you can think about it as like devotion rather than discipline.
I think too, like building a reward around it is a really important biohack. And then habit stacking. There's habits you want to create, and then there's habits you should create. Yeah. And how can you create a reward system so you get the feel good feeling? I've been doing that with morning vitamins and taking my testosterone
with
cream.
Your supplement.
Yeah, and getting to the gym earlier and the consistency and giving myself, a reward and then noticing, being very aware, practicing a lot of body awareness of how does my day change when I shift the time that I do something? Yeah. How does the rest of the day go? Yeah. How do things function or work better? And if they don't work better, okay, great, let's make another shift. I think sort of having that embodied awareness is really interesting. Sometimes I think, just to go back to Cari's episode, I sometimes think like, is the adrenals, is that just too simple of an answer? There's a little bit of doubt in me that goes, I don't know if it's just that simple.
Well, here's the deal is they're the foundation of everything else. Mm-hmm. So if you go to the roots and you work on the foundation first, everything upstream is going to function better. Yeah. So that's the simplicity of it,
Okay. Yeah. It's worth it.
Yeah. And one thing we didn't even touch on or talk about is ashwagandha. Like ashwagandha is the king herb for your adrenals. So if you're over 38 or 40 years old, like you should just be on ashwagandha as a daily, every single day. It's just going to make a huge difference. There's other herbs for your adrenals like eleuthero, cordyceps, rhamania. All these different herbs are going to be really supportive. All the lion's mane and all those mushroom blends are going to be really supportive for your adrenals. But then like eating shiitake mushrooms, eating reishi, these things make a big difference in how your body functions and how you feel, how well your hormones are balanced and in optimal states relates to how you feel emotionally. So I think so many of us don't understand that hormones and emotions are two sides of the same coin. So if you're feeling like anxious and stressed out and overwhelmed, there might be something deeper like a gut thing, or your vagus nerve is in a tangle. There's other things that could be a part of it. But if your estrogen levels are tanked and you're just all over the place, then those could make a big difference. And it's often getting onto bioidentical hormones gives you enough space. Like, okay, wow, I feel okay. Now I can
I'm sleeping at night
on my gut health,
Right.
because before that you're just underwater with it all. So it can be a really nice first step. There's just so many different schools of thought to how
It's such a big topic, isn't it? I mean, it's just vast. And in closing, I think what feels uplifting about when we have speakers, especially in your industry, on is the holistic approach really is so important. So much of modern psychology right now is taking a look at the truth is that our mind and our emotions and our body are not separate things. We're treating them as if they're separate, but they're not. They all come together. Your emotions and your mind are just as intertwined with your hormones and all of these things. They're not separate. We have to start looking at it from a big picture. So with that, please tell me what your journey's been like. If you are in andropause or menopause, we're curious to see what things have been working for you.
Much love, y'all.
Much love.
Thanks for tuning in. This episode was hosted by Tantric Sex Master Coach and Positive Psychology Facilitator Leah Piper, as well as by Chinese and Functional Medicine Doctor and Taoist Sexology Teacher Dr. Willow Brown. Don't forget, your comments, likes, subscribes, and suggestions matter. Let's realize this new world together.
Awaken Arousal Oil is my new best friend. Like Laura says, holy forking shirt balls, did it deliver on its promise. I could feel the blood flow and warmth, and that was the easiest I've ever achieved multiple orgasms. This is all natural botanical oils. It is made with CBD because CBD helps relax muscles and it eases tension. This stuff smells so good and it mixes with your pheromones like mwah, so good. Get yourself some. Link is in the show notes.